All righty. Well, thank you, Brett. I want to give a big shout out to thanks, Brett, and thanks for everybody at Sporty for having me on tonight. As Brett was saying, my name is Matt Clark. I am a product trainer here as a part of our aviation training team here at Garmin. As he was saying, I am a commercial single and multi-engine rated commercial pilot, and I am a very active CFII. When I'm not working here, I'm down at one of our local flight schools teaching. Enough about me. We're here tonight talking about G500, G600 TXi, new exciting flight displays, engine instrument displays, brand new systems that are really, really exciting to look at here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about all the new displays, the different options and potential different configuration options you can have, as well as some of the new LRUs, or the line replaceable units that are coming out with TXi. From there, we're going to delve into the features of TXi, new features of the primary flight display, the multifunction display, as well as our new engine indicating system. Once we get through all of that, we're going to talk a little bit about our GDU 620. So anybody out there who's running our current legacy G500, G600 systems, we'll go over a little bit of our trade-in program that we're offering. And then at the end, we'll talk about different ways that we can learn and interact with TXi and play with it a little bit more on our own. As Brett did say, we are going to be, you do have the option to ask questions through this. One of my colleagues here, Paul Yeomans, is with us answering questions live. You can use that question window to submit any questions that you may have during this presentation. Towards the end, we are going to answer a couple questions, a couple of the common questions you guys have, and we'll do our best to get those answered. Anything that we don't get to tonight, go ahead and email us at aviationtraining.webinar@garmin.com. Now, don't be afraid, don't be scrambling to write this down. That email will be in the upper right-hand corner for the entire presentation. But anything you don't get answered, please email us. We definitely want to get your questions answered. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. So the first and foremost thing we're going to interact with is the displays. Now, unlike our G500, G600 legacy systems, we do have a lot more options. If anybody's familiar with the G3X touch systems, this is going to look very similar to what you've seen there. First and foremost, we have our GDU 1060. This is our largest display. This is 11.4 inches wide by 7.25 inches tall. So it is just a little bit bigger than your current G500, G600 displays, that GDU 620. With this, it comes standard as a PFD and has the option, let me go back here, has the option of the MFD split screen. Every GDU 620 1060 has this option. What's new is if you get the engine indicating instruments, the EIS system in here, we do have the option to put a EIS strip on the side of the display. If anybody's flown G1000, this is more in line with that. We can show single engine systems. We can show multi-engine setups. A lot of versatility with it. This is as Brett was saying at the beginning, this is a completely touchscreen system, but we do have a couple other options to interact with. We have in either corner, we do have a set of dual concentric knobs, where if you're in a full screen mode, you can use those to change different bugs from heading, altitude, vertical speed, so on and so forth. We'll take a little bit closer look at that here in just a little bit. If you've got the multi-function display up, then that MFD knob, or the dual concentric knob in the corner, allows you to quickly access certain pages within there. And we'll touch on this here in more in a bit. Just like other systems, we do have our SD card slots sitting on the right-hand side. And back for popular demand is the power button up in the right-hand corner. If you're used to the older systems, we didn't have that. We did bring that guy back on this setup. But a very, very clean, very, very nice little display we have here. Another great option that this display gives us, anybody used to the legacy 500 and 600 displays knew the PFD was on the left, the MFD was on the right, and that was the way it was set. TXi gives us some options. I can choose where I want my PFD and MFD as well as that EIS strip to be. So if we take a look in the upper left-hand corner, I've got the more traditional setup. You have the PFD on the left, you have your split screen MFD more or less in the center, and you got that EIS, that engine strip right on the right-hand side. But if I don't want it on the right-hand side, if I want it on the left-hand side, take a look at that bottom center display. We can move that EIS strip on either side of the display. And then if you take a look at the upper right corner, we've swapped the MFD and the PFD. So depending on how you have this installed in your aircraft, depending on how you like to fly, we can change this and customize this to the way you want your aircraft to be. It's not, we don't have to have a separate piece of hardware. It's all nice and customizable. Your dealer will set this at time of install. So play around with it, figure out which display you want and which one's going to work the best for you. The second display we have is our G700P. And when you see P, that is a portrait display. This guy's 5.5 inches wide by 7.25 inches tall. So same height as the previous display. This one is set either as a PFD, an MFD, or as an EIS. You're not going to have, you can't switch the PFD to an MFD in flight. There's no split screen options. It is set at the time of the install. Just like the bigger display on the right-hand side, we have our 2 SD card slots for database updates, and you do have the power knob in the upper right-hand corner. And since this one is a dedicated either PFD, MFD, or EIS, you do have just the single dual concentric knob in the lower right-hand corner. As I was saying earlier, you can set this up as a strictly PFD, you can set this up as an MFD, you can set this up as an EIS. The other great option with this is you can have multiple displays in the aircraft. So I could have a PFD and an MFD. I could have this very setup that you're seeing in front of you here if I wanted all 3 displays on there. If I want another PFD for the co-pilot side, I could have 4 displays in there. So a lot of customizability that previous systems did not offer us. Another great option that this brings to the table for us is possibly of a display backup. Meaning if we lost power, that's everybody always thinks about this or thinks about when we're flying any G500, G600, G1000, even the guys flying the G3000, G5000, we all have to have standby instruments of some sort. TXi changes the game a little bit for us. With a dual 700p setup, what you see here, a PFD and an MFD, with a certain set of conditions, I can actually replace and disregard or remove all my standby instruments, and I can have my MFD operate as my backup display. Whether a hardware failure, whether we run into a power failure, but there's a few options here that we're going to need. We do need to have the dual GDU 700p, so we have to have both of these displays. You're going to need a GBB54 backup battery, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. New is, well, all you'll need is the integrated ADAHRs, the air data and heading reference systems. You'll need dual magnetometers, dual outside air probes, and your dealer will install a display backup switch. That'll switch it from that screen to that screen. So great option, especially if you're trying to clean up your panel. So the third display we have, this is our GDU 700L. So imagine we just took the previous display, that portrait display, and we put it up on its side. This is your landscape screen. It's 7.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall, and this is a dedicated EIS. Now what you're showing up here is the EIS layout of a single engine aircraft. A little later on, you'll get to see what a multi-engine layout would look like. But this screen is set. So you could have a combination of 700p or that GDU 1060, that real big display, as your primary and multi-function displays. And you could have this dedicated screen as your engine indication system. Just another potential setup. So that kind of takes us up through all the different screens that are offered with the TXi. Now this does break out a lot of new or several new line replaceable units or LRUs that didn't previously exist with our G500 or legacy G500, G600 systems. So the first is a new air data computer. Now this guy, it's a little interesting here. This guy there is the actual air data computer. Now it's a lot smaller, a lot more compact than what we've seen with traditional units. Now I do want to mention every existing LRU for the legacy G500, G600 displays will work with TXi. So if you're wanting to upgrade and you just want to swap the displays, you can do that. New installs are going to get this item right here, the new air data computer. This is going to work in conjunction with the built-in AHRS. Every TXi display has its own built-in AHRS, its own attitude and heading reference system. So that is a little bit of a departure from what we've done with previous systems. With that built-in AHRS and with this ADC, this air data computer, this is going to replace that traditional box, the traditional air data or AHRS box you've seen with other systems or even G1000 or G5000 systems. This is going to be standard with every new TXi install. And here is a picture of the GDU 700P with that new ADC mounted right to the back. So this gives you a pretty good idea of how small this guy is, how much room we're potentially going to save, both room behind the panel as well as a potential weight savings for us. So great little unit in there. We've mentioned this guy already, but this is our GBB54 backup battery. This is what's going to power our display for up to 30 minutes. So if our primary flight display goes out, if we have a complete electrical failure in the aircraft, this will provide 30 minutes, enough time for us to get out of any potential IMC conditions, get to VFR conditions, or to get us down onto the ground safely. This unit is fully field serviceable. It has a 7-year life, and every year it's going to be pretty much part of your annual. Your mechanics are going to do an annual rundown test on this battery to make sure that it is working properly. So when we paired this battery with the previous air data computer mounted to the back of the display, when we merge all these guys together, this can potentially remove that requirement for backup instruments, those standby instruments. So where panel space starts becoming an issue, this may be a great option for some people out there. And new to our retrofit side, we've never had, beyond our experimental side, we've never had an EIS or an engine indication system out there. So that box there is what everything's going to link in. All your engine sensors, cylinder head temps, all that information, all those sensors are going to link into this unit here, this GEA 110, and that is going to provide all the information for either your dedicated EIS page or for that dedicated EIS strip on the side of your 1060. This can be mounted, really nice one. Any mechanics out there are probably going to jump for joy on this one. It can be mounted on either side of the firewall. So it depends on how much space you have in the aircraft. This can help determine where we should mount this. And I know a lot of you guys are going to be asking, what sensors can I use? It is compatible with Garmin sensors as well as a whole array of third-party sensors. For more specifics on that one, I definitely recommend either checking with your regional sales managers or giving your local Garmin dealer a call, and they can tell you what's going to be compatible and what's not. And here is a great side-by-side of a couple different mounting options. So the one on the left, that is our GDU 1060. That was that big display. You have in the center the integrated ADC mounted to the back of the display, and it actually has room to mount that GEA right to the back of the panel. So if you've got space behind your panel, this is a great option for you. If space back there is limited, maybe you have more room inside the engine compartment. On the right-hand side is, I believe, one of our bearings out at the hangar, and you can see the GEA mounted directly in the engine compartment. So a lot of options, a lot of potential mounting positions, depending on where you have room for this guy. Other new thing for us is the GCU 485. This is a PFD controller. We've got 5 different variations up here, but these are designed to be used or mounted elsewhere in the aircraft when it may be difficult to reach the display to adjust items such as your heading bugs, altitude bugs. We do have, as we said, 5 different models depending on what autopilot you may have in the aircraft. Top one being the KFC 100 or KFC 150. Those has got a few extra buttons there, a few extra options. You have options for the KFC 200, 250, 300 series. Another one for the KFC 275, 325. Anybody running an S-Tech autopilot or a Collins APS autopilot, you've got an option in there. And if you don't have any of those, or if you have a different autopilot, there is just a generic option where we can just change heading, altitude bugs, barometric settings, vertical speed, air speeds, and change your CDI source. But all this allows us, gives us a third way to potentially change some of those bugs, some of those options on the screen. So those are the new screens, those are the new LRUs. Now we're going to kind of dive in a little bit into the interface. How do we get to interact with this guy? So the first and foremost way we can interact is directly with the touchscreen itself. A lot of if you're looking on there, these blue boxes on there from airspeed, heading, vertical speed, the barometric settings, altitude bugs. You even see more options down there for CDI source, menu setup to change different features on your primary flight display, or to get to your MFD, to break into that split screen. You can touch directly on the touchscreen. Anybody who's flying with the GTN series, this is going to be very, very similar to what you're operating with now. On the sides, on either the left and the right sides, as well as on the bottom of the screen, we have bezels on there to help brace your hand. So that way you're not just trying to poke at the screen. We all know as you get into turbulent flight, using a touchscreen can be a little bit more difficult. Those ledges on there are designed to help brace your hand to stabilize so we can more accurate data input on there. The other way we get to use the screen, and you actually got a little video here showing, is with actually I'm jumping ahead too far. Here what you're seeing is actually using the touchscreen to change the barometrics setting on here. In this case, we're adjusting it to 3001. So it's a very quick, very easy way just to touch on the screen, type in in this case, the barometric setting, but the same could apply for a heading, for an airspeed, an altitude. Very quick, very easy access to type this information into the screen. Here. The other option is using the knobs in the either corner. Those dual concentric knobs. The large outer knob is going to allow you to cycle through what you're adjusting. So if you notice where I'm highlighting on there, if I use that big knob, I can select between a heading bug, an altitude, vertical speed. In this case, we're going to change that barometric setting again. So I'll roll that big knob all the way over. Once the baro option is highlighted, I can use the little knob to actually edit the field that I've selected. This could be an option if we're in a little bit more turbulent flight, or I'm having a hard time touching the screen. I don't have to use it. I'm not relying on that. I can use those knobs to input the exact same information for us. The basic layout of your PFD is just about like any other Garmin display out there. If you're used to a G1000, the G3 5000 series, the G3X Touch series, this ought to look very, 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 very familiar to you. On the left-hand side, we still have our airspeed indicator, that airspeed tape. We've got the airspeed bug at the top. We've got true airspeed and ground speed listed down at the bottom, as well as you've got the option to turn on different airspeed bugs. In this case, we've got a landing gear extension bug, but you get a VX, VY, as well as the color-coded tape, the green, the yellow, and then that red bar pole, meaning we've gone past our do not exceed speeds. In the center is your attitude indicator. You've got 10, 15, 30, 45 degree marks. The two little airplane icons at the top, those actually indicate what a standard rate turn would be. So that's another way we can simplify our instrument scan ever so slightly. We have in the very center there, you have your slip skid indicator, that little white rectangle. So instead of stepping on the ball, we're gonna pretty much step on the rectangle. On the right-hand side, we have our altitude tape, altitude bug at the top, the barometric setting down on the bottom. On the very right-hand side, you have your vertical speed indicator that will move up and down, and it's a little hard to see in this picture, but you do have a little blue option, a little blue box that'll move up and down to adjust your vertical speed bugs. Next to that, on the left-hand side of the altitude tape, you have your vertical deviation indicator. Am I on glide slope? Am I above? Am I below? Normal flying, if you're just flying around, you're in a terminal environment, you're en route, you don't see that. It declutters off the screen. The only time we're going to see that vertical deviation indicator appear is if we have an approach loaded and active in our GPS navigator, our GNS series or GTN series navigator. Down at the bottom, we still have our horizontal situation indicator, or HSI. All the same features there that I've applied on previous systems. Something new for us here is our dedicated CDI bar. That bar there is doing the same thing that our CDI is doing on the HSI. It's just telling us lateral guidance. On the left side, you're seeing what status you're using, whether you're using a GPS, a nav, a localizer, or VOR frequency. And on the right, telling us our CDI scaling. In this case, we're in a terminal scaling versus an LPV scaling or an LNAV plus V or an oceanic if you're going over the pond. Something new to this that we brought over from our NXi series, the upgraded G1000, is our HSI map. I do have the option of replacing the HSI with an HSI map. This is essentially a small version of your multifunction display. We can display airspace, traffic, all sorts of options. We'll get to here in a second. What stays on here is that blue heading bug, so we can still adjust that. You still have that magenta diamond, that current track indicator, and you're going to have the tip of the HSI pointer itself. So still a little bit of information there. And for those wondering, well, how do I get my lateral guidance? That's when we're going to default back to that dedicated CDI bar just above the HSI map. Being that this is a map, we can overlay a lot of different information on here. I can overlay NextRad, whether it's FISB, the ADS-B weather, whether it's SiriusXM, whether it's Connex, we can overlay that NextRad radar onto this map. I can overlay terrain. Now, I can't have both of them on at the same time because they use the same color scheme, but I can display terrain information on here. The yellow as I get within 1,000 feet, red as I get to within 100 feet of that terrain. I can show obstacles and wires, power lines, hot lines. And anybody out there still who's running Storm Scope, you can display that information on here as well. So a lot of great information that you can display and show right onto the display. So synthetic vision. If you've ever gotten to fly, ever had the chance to fly with synthetic vision, it's great, it's wonderful. I love it. TXi is no exception to this. You do have the option for synthetic vision. For those that go with the G600 TXi displays, synthetic vision does come standard, just like the legacy G600 displays. For those who just are going with the G500 TXi displays, there is a 10-hour trial. That is something new for us. So when you get the aircraft, you will get a trial of that synthetic vision technology, letting you fly with it, interact with it, letting you come to a better decision. Do I want to have this enablement? Do I want to be able to see this every time I go fly? Or can I get away with not having it? This is what it's going to look like if you don't have synthetic vision. You want to have the standard brown for Earth, blue for the sky, much simpler display. But every install has that 10-hour trial. For those that decide for the G500 TXi that you want this, This is something that is enabled, that your dealer will enable at the time of your install or whenever you decide that you want to purchase this upgrade. So we've talked about the PFD, we've talked about our U's and the displays. Now we're going to talk about the MFD. As we said earlier, every GDU 1060, the screen you're seeing displayed before you here, has the option to display or have the, or doesn't have the option. It comes standard with a MFD split screen. For the G5, the GDU 700P, that screen is going to be dedicated MFD like you're seeing here. That's something I like to point out. Anybody out there who uses Garmin Pilot or is used to the GTN 650, GTN 750 series, or even those that run G3, G5000, working with the GTCs, the touch controllers, this ought to look pretty darn familiar. All the icons, the layouts, you can see the map icons are the same, traffic's the same. If you're comfortable, if you're used to working with a GTN, you're going to be right at home working with the MFD off the TXI display. We purposely made them the two the same. So here we've got another video going, how we can interact with the MFD. Being this is a touchscreen display, I can touch directly on the icon I want, just like the GTN, just like Garmin Pilot. You've got the pinch to zoom, like we're all used to. I can zoom in, zoom out. I can rotate through from charts, waypoint information. I can pull up my flight plan information. Now, like previous systems, I can't edit the flight plan. That would still have to be done on your actual GPS navigator, but we can display that information on here, all using the touchscreen. The other option we have is to use the dual concentric knob. Now down there we've got several set pages. I can use that large knob to scroll between the map, the traffic, terrain, charts, and weather pages. For those that get the indication EIS system, the engine indication system, you will have an extra option on there so you can pull more engine information, fuel flow information, and display a lot more of that information on the screen. All of that done very quickly, very rapidly using that dual concentric knob. So when the workload gets high, when we're in high turbulence times, I don't have to worry about touching the screen. I can just roll a knob to what I want to display. So a lot of functionality, a lot of redundancy built into this on purpose. And then the EIS, this is kind of talking about this guy just a little bit more in detail. We are replacing those traditional instruments. You can see I have a 700P here listed at, or showing a single engine aircraft, where you've got your manifold pressure, your RPM, your fuel flow in gallons per hour, all with those round gauges there, but showing the numbers underneath them. I can also show the exhaust gas temps as well as the cylinder head temps for all the engines, and we can support up to 6 cylinders per engine. A lot of good options on there, as well as total fuel used, have some fuel computing capabilities in there. What you're seeing on the right is what the multi-function or what the multi-engine setup would look like. We've got the manifold pressures next to each other, the RPM next to each other, the prop synchronization there right in the center. All the gauges there, but pretty much duplicated. Same thing for the EGTs, CHTs. So really well laid out and very easily seen. All the information that we need, that critical information, is all right there. And this can be displayed on this dedicated page, as well as showing it on that EIS strip. So right here, this is what the multi-engine would look like on that EIS strip. We're showing the manifold pressure, the RPM, the prop sync right there in the center, whereas everything else, the fuel flow, oil pressure, temps, CHTs, EGTs, those are all sliding bars left and right there, with your fuel flow down at the bottom. And in this case, we're running this on fairly low fuel. If I want more information than that, if I want more detailed, this is what the dedicated engine page is going to look like. Now I can see the oil temps, oil pressures, gallons, fuel flow, gallons per hour, much more detailed, as well as more detailed information on both the EGT and CHT information. Another new for the retrofit side is our lean assist mode. This is going to run very, very similar to what G1000 runs. I can select the lean mode down there at the bottom, and it's going to take me a second here. Make sure I got the video going here. I can hit the lean button down there, and at this point we're going to start leaning our mixture back, and we're going to see our cylinder head temps rise, and we're going to keep doing this. We'll keep leaning until we reach a peak. When one of the cylinders reaches a peak, you're going to see a line pop up above that bar, or above one of those blue bars there in the center. In this case, the number 4 cylinder, meaning that we have peaked. Now I can enrich, and we'll see that -12 there showing the change in that, the difference from what our peak was to what it is now. So we can get really, really accurate leaning. We can configure this for both rich of peak leaning, ROP, or we can do lean of peak leaning, LOP. You'll definitely want to consult your engine manufacturer, airframe manufacturer, as to what they recommend or what they advise as their best practices for that. So we've talked about LRUs, we've talked about the screens, we've talked about all the different functions of the EIS, the PFD, MFD, how we can interact, how we're going to work with this system in the air. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how we can upgrade this system, as well as how we can learn more about this guy. So currently, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, every existing LRU for the G500, G600, the legacy displays, will work with TXI. Meaning if I want to upgrade, I just want to pull out the GDU 1060 and I want a larger screen. I want the GDU 1060, or I want the dual 700 displays. But I don't want to replace all those LRUs. That's okay. We can do that. All those LRUs will work. For guys that are wanting to do that, we do offer the trade-in the program here. For those who have a G500 system installed in their aircraft, we do offer a $2,000 trade-in value for that display. For a G600 system, it's a $3,000 trade-in value. Now, we do have a couple conditions here. We don't want to just pull any GDU that's been lying around for who knows how long. They need to be warranty registered. So every display that comes back in will get checked against the warranty registration. This unit needs to be functional and flight worthy. So if you found one off eBay that's been broken for years, it's not going to work for this trade-in program. And this trade-in program is valid for the GDU 1060 only, the display you're seeing here, that large display. This guy is going to be valid until June 20th of 2018. So if you're wanting to take advantage of that, that is your deadline, June 20th. But a potential option for those that are wanting to upgrade and clean up their panel just a little bit more. Training options, and this is where I get to come into the play a lot more here. We do have a couple training apps that are out there. These are free apps. We don't charge for these guys whatsoever. The picture you're seeing on the left there, that is our Windows-based training application. You can modify what GDU screen you have, whether it's the 1060, the 700p, the 700L. You got a lot of different options, so you can customize it and play with it, interact with it. Or if you get TXI, you can load this up on your computer, run through scenarios, run through setups on the ground without having to have the engine running or hooking up a ground power cart. I don't know about the rest of you guys. Kansas City during the winter time is not the most fun time to be sitting out in the hangar. This does also link in with a GTN trainer, and this is running the latest software. So you can load flight plans, give it some airspeed, run through these complex scenarios. This is a great tool. If you're thinking about TXI, if you've already got TXI ordered and you're wanting to become more familiar with it, more competent behind the equipment, I highly recommend downloading this piece of software. The other one we have, the image on the left there, is our iPad trainer. This is available through the App Store. And same as the Windows-based one, we can load it up as a GDU 1060, the big display. I can change it as a 700L or 700p displays. And the nice feature with the iPad is I'm using the touchscreen just like I would in the aircraft. So you get a little bit of that positive learning there between the two. But both of these are free. These are great resources. I highly recommend, if you're interested at all, to download these and interact with them. The other option we have is an e-learning course. I've spent the last couple months, a good portion of last year, working on this project. This is a web-based learning. This is available through flygarmin.com through our training tab. And this allows you to learn the system in a lot more detail than what I went over tonight at your own pace. Goes through everything through system descriptions, user interface, PFD, MFD, EIS, different abnormal operations you're going to potentially encounter, as well as having a couple scenarios in there to get you to interact with the display just a little bit more. Those that do purchase the TXI display, this is included with every TXI purchase. You automatically get a code for this program. So if you get the TXI, very highly recommend going through this and learning the system. Become familiar with what's in your aircraft. For those that are not so sure but want a little bit more in-depth information beyond just playing with the iPad or Windows-based trainer, or more than what I covered here tonight, this is available through Fly Garmin for $49. So we made it fairly reasonable for you guys to learn and get a lot more information about this system. And that's going to take me right up to the end here. Please explore more here at garmin.com/aviation. If you do have questions that we don't get to here, email that to aviationtraining.webinar@garmin.com. If you have a question, please email in. We want to get an answer to you. You can check with your dealers. You can check with your local regional sales manager. They'd be more than glad to answer any questions you have. Down there is a link to our dealer locator if you need assistance in trying to find your closest dealer. So at this point, I'm going to go check with Paul here real fast and see what couple common questions we have. First one we have is talking about the GBB54, the backup battery. Big question there is will it work in Cirrus, Diamond aircraft, composite aircraft? Unfortunately, no. That backup battery is only going to be for metal skinned aircraft. If we're running a composite airframe, unfortunately, you can't use that GBB54 backup battery. For the EIS, that's the second question for that EIS only display. Question, will it work with turbocharged aircraft or turbine aircraft? That's turbocharged. Okay. It will work with piston and piston turbocharged aircraft. So, great question there. A real big common question we're getting here is that GDU 1060, that big display. A lot of questions about the size. It is slightly larger than the current GDU 620, the current legacy G500, G600 display. So if you're wanting to put that GDU 1060 in your aircraft, it is going to require just a little bit of panel work. It is ever so slightly larger. So a couple of great questions there. But that's about all I've got on my end here. Like I said, any other questions, please email us in aviationtraining.webinar@garmin.com. Also email to aviation.support@garmin.com. That goes over to our pilot operations teams. If you can't, we want to get you an answer. We don't want you walking away without an answer. So, but that's it. And we're also going to stay online here for just a little bit longer here. I'm going to turn this over back to Brett, but we're going to stay on a little bit longer. Any of those last and lingering questions here, I'm going to let Paul continue answering those for you. But I want to thank everybody for coming out and attending this tonight. I think Brett said this is going to be up here on a couple different platforms here, so feel free to come back and rewatch this as you need to. But without further doubt, I will pass it over back to Brett.
Matt, thank you. That was excellent information. again, from my standpoint as a flight instructor, and I like to work a lot with students flying Garmin avionics, the best thing I think you can do tonight, in addition to reviewing this webinar, as we post it tomorrow, again, that'll be at sporties.com/webinars to watch the full video recording, as well as the Sporties YouTube channel. But I want to stress what Matt said is to go online if you have an iPad and download that the TXi training app, completely free. I use it with my students, even just as a training aid, but it's got a database of the entire United States. So that, or again, the GTN 750 trainer, you can practice approaches, you can practice setups. Excellent resource and a great way to interact with the technology that Garmin's put into this excellent system if you don't have access to the actual display to touch it in person. But yeah, definitely get on there for the Windows program, or as my preference would be the iPad app because of the touchscreen interface to really appreciate and check out the power of this system. Matt, thank you again, and Paul for answering the questions. As Matt mentioned, we'll leave this up here for another 10 minutes or so to be able to write in directly to both Matt and Paul with the most detailed questions. Try to stump them. I haven't been able to yet, but I think they'll have an answer for you, and what other kind of aircraft configuration you might have. With that, we're going to end the presentation, but again, leave this up, so feel free to write in with the questions, and check back tomorrow at sporties.com/webinars for the recording. As well as when you hit that page, you'll see our upcoming schedule for our webinar presentations for 2018. Our next one coming up is on our Sporties 2018 Learn to Fly course. We're going to demo that and show what's new and how you can use that for both private pilot and instrument training. We also have presentations coming up on in-flight weather fundamentals, how to use Sirius XM, ADS-B weather, portable receivers. We have a spring flying refresher coming up in March, a great way to kind of brush off some of that dust and what you should be looking at from a currency standpoint. We have some weather fundamentals and strategy that coming up in April, surviving the check ride, and much, much more. So check out sporties.com/webinars. Again, these are all completely free, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. With that, good evening, and again, we'll leave this up here. Feel free to interact with Matt and Paul in the question console. Thank you.